What is really good, everybody, and welcome back to the End Goal Podcast, where we talk about life stories and my own. Today, before we get into the next set of guest interviews and everything, I wanted to take a moment just to talk about something that I've been thinking about over the past few months. My thoughts aren't the most, I think, engaging or the most grand or the most introspective, but there are times when I have a couple of bangers that I want to share with y'all, and today's one of those days. And this kind of just is all over the place a little bit, so we're just gonna dive deep into the first one, which is the empty vessel creator glamour. And I originally was thinking about this because I do watch a lot of creators online. I'm trying to be in the space itself. And what I kind of gathered, there's like a couple of different types of creators, right? There's the creator who you could never see yourself being, but they're entertaining, so you consume their content, etc. They're the I'm making something for you, I'm different than you. Come watch the things that I'm making type of creator. There's a consuming gap there. But then there's the other type of creator who operates, behaves, and makes their content in such a way where you think like that could be me as well. I could do that. Or, the type of people who you want to live vicariously through. I call those the empty vessel creators, because in many cases, they don't have a personality of their own necessarily, but it's just that the things that they do, you think, yeah, I could do that too. All of the just chatting streams out there that have blown up over the past few years, those are the empty vessel creators, right? They just sit there and talk to you, and you think, yeah, I can put myself in their shoes, and it's like I'm having the same conversation with how many over 1,000 people are in this chat room right now. I kind of initially saw Chris Williamson as a empty vessel podcaster because he's not a Andrew Huberman who has a PhD and is a scientist and stuff, and then he's making a podcast about science. He's not a Hassan Minhaj, who was first a comedian and then he started doing a podcast. Same with Trevor Noah, who was a comedian, a talk show host, etc., and then he started doing a podcast. He, Chris Williamson, Jay Shetty, to an extent, I don't even see Alex Hormozi as an empty vessel, because he's just so far removed from, before he even started, he didn't create content for that to be his thing. He built his businesses. He was like, okay, cool, I need to build a brand. Now let me start creating content. That's not the empty. You can't put yourself in that vessel. But I genuinely feel like when you watch people out there who just podcast or just create content or just read books, or maybe that YouTube channel that crafts things out of wood, metal, etc., the smithing YouTube channels, sometimes those make you feel like, okay, I could do that too, right? Because this is somebody who seemingly was just like me, had a job, and then pivoted into this, and then they made something out of it. I've been watching a lot of crafting YouTube over the past couple of months, and I'm like, I could do that. Now, I don't think I could code a fucking little PCB board or whatever they're called and, learn how to make one of those. But I think I could get some wood and make something out of it. I think I could go to, a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a Hobby Lobby, a Michael's, and get some things and make something out of it. I think I could, and I do plan to. There are things that there are ideas that are stewing for me to make things, but it's like I could make things like that. It's not necessarily as hard as it seems. And for those type of creators, I feel like they're more of an empty vessel, where the way that they the way that they create their content, they create it so that you can put yourself in their place and feel like, you know, you could do it too, or that could be you, or that is you in that moment. You're the one doing it. You're the one creating it, etc. So the empty vessel glamour has been on my mind because I think, and the reason why I call it a glamour is because I still do think it's a bit of a facade. I still do think like there's something not still not real about a lot of it. There's something that isn't what it seems, because when you try it, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work when I try it, but it worked for them? Why doesn't it work when I do it and it worked for that person and that person and that person? That's where the glamour comes in, where they make it seem like anyone can do it, but not everyone can do it. And I've caught myself, and I've been cautioning myself, like, don't fall into the glamour of these things. Just because streamers and everybody look all friendly and they're talking to you like you're a pal, like you're a person in the chat, does not mean when you go up to them in person, you can dap them up and be like, yo, let's go grab a bite to eat type shit. You're not their friend. You're their viewer. You're their audience member, right? There's the glamour there is what's capturing you. And being aware of the glamour, I think, is, breaking the magic a little bit. But it's important for both sides. You don't want to develop the parasocial relationships that, cause harm to both the viewer and the content creator and or the celebrity or whoever it is. And at the same time, you need that glamour, because how else do you engage your audience? How else do you engage the people who are fucking with your shit? So been thinking about the empty vessel glamour quite a bit, trying not to be that. And maybe to some extent it's necessary. You have to develop this facade of you online, however real or fake it is, and let that facade, let that glamour generate and bring people in. I haven't fully figured out the ins and outs of it, but that's how I see the online scape right now, is a ton of empty vessel glamour, right? The pictures online that you think I could post up by a Ferrari right now if I just go, take one for a test drive, and boom, I test drove a Ferrari and I can take pictures in it, take videos in it, etc. Or, I could post up in front of that LA or New York or Miami or whatever big city restaurant, etc., and take some pictures. Look at how good I look with this really aesthetic place. That food costed so much, we just had appetizers and then we left, type shit. But it makes you think, okay, I can do that too, and that's cool. But it's also like, do you need to do that too? Do you need to? I was thinking, I think it was listening to a podcast that's somebody previously, and somebody had said something along the lines of, we're not meant to be exposed to so much information in our daily lives. We're not. Oh, I know, it was Veer Das. It was so interesting. He did a Hassan Minhaj brought him on his Hassan Needs to Know or Hassan Doesn't Know podcast, and it was interesting because Veer Das was saying, we do not need to know where our lives stand in comparison to somebody else's. We don't need to know, or should, and don't need the ability to know how many likes my life is getting. We just need to consume other people's lives and enjoy that, enjoy their happiness. And if we share ours, let other people enjoy our happiness. But we don't need to, like, it's not meant for us, I think is the way he put it. Like, there's there's a lot of, how do I put this in a way that concisely concludes the point before I go off on 5 tangents? There's a subsect of people who can glamorize their life effectively. There's a subset of people who consume that glamorized lifestyle of other people effectively. One person works their 9 to 5 and just enjoys consuming things online and lives their life. One person puts their life online, and that's their fucking 24/7 thing, and they get their life consumed by other people. Cool. Then there's a subsect in the middle that both consumes and puts their life online, to where you're seeing my life is not getting consumed as much as somebody else's, etc. Are people enjoying my happiness? Why do I not want to put my happiness online? These numbers aren't nice, etc. People aren't liking, people aren't reposting, people aren't sharing, people aren't commenting, etc. And Virdas said, we don't need that. We were not meant to do that. We were just meant to enjoy other people's happiness. And the issue that I find with the empty vessel creator glamour is the glamour entices you to try the same thing, not get the same result, and then because maybe you're not the best at comparison bias, maybe you fall into the pit trap of, the comparison fallacy, and you start comparing your life to somebody else's. We were never meant to do that. We were never meant to compare our life to somebody who is 20 levels above us. We compared our lives to the people who are in our hometown. We compared our lives to the people who we work with, the people who are in our immediate level, maybe 1 or 2 levels up and down, but not 20 levels up. Like you're not supposed to be able to see over. We never had the ability to see over the ledge that we were working at, that we were climbing. But now, even as we're climbing ours, we're seeing somebody who's flying above us and thinking, why can that be me? Why can't that be me? But what that does is that makes you want to jump to the airplane instead of keep climbing to the airplane. And I feel like that's a little bit dangerous for us. Now, wow, I brought that shit back. Ooh, I like that. I like that airplane analogy. I'm going to use that. I'm going to have to remember that. And I'm probably going to forget that. Next thing I was thinking about. Okay, this one is just me being very... This is just how my curiosity plays out, right? So my wife and I were at a strip mall over here in the Pennsylvania area, and we walked by this shop called Theory. I've never heard of Theory in my life. To be completely honest with you, I've never heard of Theory in my life, but it was a brick and mortar store. It didn't really look like anybody was in that store at that time. And I'm sure it was open, but it didn't look like anybody was in there. So I thought to myself, I was like, why? Okay, I've never heard of this store. Why does this store have a brick and mortar? Or why does this brand have a brick and mortar store here in this strip mall? Like, what's so important about this store? I've never heard of it. And so I looked it up, right? And so Theory is a brand that's been around since when was it? 1997. When I was born, so was Theory. Okay? Theory was founded by Andrew Rosen, former CEO of Anne Klein and Calvin Klein a Calvin Klein executive, along with co-founder Eli Tahari, who was a New York City a fashion designer. And they started this thing in 1997. It was doing well. It was initially women's pants. That was like the initial product offering, and then they expanded into like whole clothing lines, whole clothing, like I think it's like upscale luxury men's and women's fashion now. And around 2003, they sold the company to a Japanese retailer, I believe, fast retailing company who also owns Uniqlo. And so I was like, when I read up on it, I was like, okay, cool. So they have motion a little bit. They have a little bit of motion, which is fine. They can have all the motion they want. But I was like, I've never heard of this. It's so interesting to me that there are just companies out there that I've never heard of that have billion-dollar market like revenue, and they're global. And this one has 433 stores across, I think, the globe, not just like the US. But I'm like, I've never heard of this in my fucking life. And that's so interesting to me. It just makes me think, like, how do they do it? You know, when did they do it? There's brands now that pop up that are like crushing it, right? And I'm like, how do you take a brand that's nothing and grow it into an empire, right? Do you keep the brand? Do you sell the brand? How do you even get into a brick and mortar? You know, there's times when you go to a mall and you see like one of those like small little shops in between all the big name brand ones, and I'm like, how did you get here? Who is your consumer base? Like, what is your product set like? How much money are you making off this place? Like, how did you get yourself in this mall? How did you get yourself in this brick and mortar store, etc.? It's so that's what I was curious about. And so one of the things I was curious about was theory. And I think there's others along the time that I get curious about that I look into. And I think theory was just one of the ones that I was like, you keep thinking that new things can't pop up, and new things are always popping up. Theory being one of them. Not even theory. It's just because I don't know it, I'm like, how the fuck did this work? Who the fuck are you? How are you here? I've never heard of you. Thinking that whatever is in my current mental landscape of knowledge is in finality like what has been and what will be and what is. But finally, I told myself, okay, instead of saying, who the fuck is this? Go look them up. Learn about them. It doesn't matter. I'm never shopping there in my life. I know that. But learn about them. You have the ability to learn about them. If you're curious, you have the ability to look it up, etc. And yeah, dude, Theory clothing brand is a thing. It's been there since 1997. It started from a different Calvin Klein executive and a fashion designer in New York. Started with women's pants, expanded to multiple brick and mortar stores, expanded to men's and women's clothing. They still drop lines. The revenue, I think, maybe has decreased a little bit over the years, but they are expensive. But yeah, they're a thing, owned by a Japanese company, Fast Retailing Co. There it is. Can we talk about loans real quick? Can we hard pivot to finance and interest rates and loans real quick? Because I think more people need to understand this, and we don't, because we do a really, really bad job explaining it. And I'm gonna take a stab at explaining it right now. If I don't, I'll workshop it and try it again in the future. So over the past how many ever years, student loan debt, regular loan debt, a lot of loan debt gets into the media a lot. It's a thing. It happens. People go their entire life not being able to pay off their student loan debt. Student loan debt itself is predatory now, and that's its own conversation. But something I hear a lot is, I've been making X amount of payments for the past few years, and they've all been going to interest. Barely anything, if anything, has been going to my principal. It's basically stayed the same. And people were like, I feel like this is a scam. I feel like this is like not okay, etc. And in some ways, yeah, the interest rate, like whatever interest rate you got, could be a really bad one for you. You're not able to pay off all the interest in time, therefore you're not even able to hit principal, etc. That's unfortunate. That is very unfortunate. In the cases where it's not like that, let's talk about how it's supposed to work. Okay, the way a loan is supposed to work is you take money. I take $10,000 of a loan with a let's just call it a 5% interest rate. Okay, so what's 5% of 10,000? That's about $500. So $500 a month is your interest on $10,000 initially, because that's your principal. So your principal is 10,000, 5% interest. Starting off, your interest is every month 5% on the 10. So if you only pay $500 every month, you are only paying the interest. You are never decreasing the principal, because the way loans work is all the money goes towards interest first, because that is a way that loan companies can keep getting money from you without having to reduce the actual obligation that you have to pay, which is the principal. The second thing is interest is calculated not on the original principal, but the current principal balance when they calculate the interest and the amortization. And the thing that trips people up is if you pay above the interest that you have, like once the interest is decreased, if there's no interest for them to put the money to, they have to put it to the principal. Like that is literally what they have to do. There are methods that they could use. There are slimy methods that they could probably use where they only recognize a partial payment for the interest until more interest accrues, and they recognize the rest of the payment, so it goes towards interest again. That would suck. But they have to basically take your money, they put it towards interest, because that is money that they'll keep getting, and then they'll put it towards the principal. Now, once again, interest is calculated on current principal, right? Interest is calculated on current principal. So if the first month I pay $1,000 a month, okay, so let's say my interest is 5%, it's $10,000 loan. So my first month's payment, say I make $1,000, 500 of it goes towards the interest, because that's the 5% on the 10K. The other 500 of it goes towards the principal, right? So now my principal is 9,500, because 500 went towards interest, the other 500 went towards principal of the first payment. Now there's more what's it called? There's more technical math and stuff that goes along into it, when it's calculated on a monthly basis, not a yearly basis, and there's a whole amortization schedule that goes along with it, which if you ever take out a loan, I would highly recommend doing the amortization table yourself and then calculating what they're telling you versus how much you think you need to actually pay. But regardless, say it comes to month 2, okay? So the first month you had a $1,000 payment, 500 of it went to interest, 500 of it went to principal. Cool. Month 2, there's still a 5% interest on the current loan balance. You're still making $1,000. You're still making $1,000 payment. The 5% that you're paying in month 2 is not 5% of 10. It's now 5% of 9,500, which means your $1,000 payment is split up into $475 of interest, less interest than month 1, and then $525 then go towards principal. At least it should, in theory. Then you keep your payment the exact same, and over time you'll see less and less interest is being paid, because less and less interest is accruing, because your principal is less and less and less, until most of your payment is just towards the principal. There's barely any interest on it. To put it a little bit differently, you could do the same exercise, but say instead of making $500 a month or take your $500 interest due every month, and instead of making $1,000 payment, you make a $600 payment. So every month you have 500 going towards interest, or whatever the 5% interest is, and then 100 going towards your principal. So the majority of your payment is all interest initially, because your principal balance is so high. But as long as you really try to make any payments above the value of the interest, the excess that's above the interest should go towards principal, decreasing your principal over time, therefore decreasing your interest payments over time. So if you keep that payment the same, more of it goes towards principal over time and less towards interest. But at the beginning of the loan life cycle, it is very interest heavy, because that is how loan companies get their money. They get their money through the interest. So what they do is they front load that. They front load the interest so they can get all of the excess money they can from you, knowing full well that on the back half, it's going to be all actual principal that you're paying back. And I think it's important for us to realize that, because you're going to take out a new loan. Say you get a 30-year house loan, mortgage loan, or you get a 5-year loan for like your business, or you get a loan from a friend that you actually are paying back on interest and things like that. And in the first couple of years, you will barely see that principal number shift. It should be going down. If it's not, then you have to reassess, call the loan company, call a third party person to check the loan, etc. But if you are making payments above the value of the interest that has accrued on the loan, then that number will go down, albeit slowly. So it still feels like, all I'm doing is paying interest and nothing's going towards my principal. But that's where the time factor comes in. That's kind of where you have to more or less respect the loan vehicle, and understand that I'm paying most of this is interest and I have to pay the interest. But as long as I'm able to hit principal, it will go down over time. Even if I keep my monthly payment the same, it will go down over time. The problem is that people don't pay on time, or they accrue a lot of interest. Like, a lot of issues with student loan debt is interest accrues while don't have to pay it off. And then once you have to start making your payments, all of your payments goes towards interest that's been accrued. So you will never catch up to reducing the interest to zero and then starting to hit principal, because there's so much interest that's built up. And that's the biggest issue with student loan debt is it accrues while you're not paying it off. And then when you're required to start paying it off, these are your monthly payments that are required. You're like, okay, cool, I'm making a $2,000, $2,500 payment every month, but it just keeps going to interest, because as you're trying to pay off previous interest, current interest keeps accruing, and it accrues at the rate of the principal that is never decreasing. And so what I could advise somebody to do if I was a financial advisor, I'm only a CPA, is understand that when you have to start making a loan payment, your beast is the interest. Your beast is not the principal. Your beast is the interest that you have to pay. And that is what you should try and reduce effective immediately. Even if you have to go more than the monthly required payment, kill that interest as quick as possible, so that when you are making your monthly payments, they're going towards interest finally. It hurts, it hurts to do that, because that means more money going out of your pocket that's not being used for you. But it's reducing the amount of pain you're going to feel in the future when you have this loan that you're still paying off 45 years in the future, when you're 60 and 70 and 80, and then you pass away with debt, right? But that's I just wanted to explain how a loan vehicle works in like the bare bones. Like I said, there's a lot of complications to it. There's a lot of technicalities to it. There's certain tax codes that take advantage of this. Interest expense is a big thing, where if you're paying off a loan companies are required to send you an interest. Well, not required actually. Your mortgage company is required to send you a form 1098, which is your mortgage interest statement that tells you how much interest expense you accrued on the loan over the year. A lot of the times mortgage companies will just lump in your property taxes that you've paid into the monthly payment. So they will take that instead of you paying it. And they'll put a portion of your monthly payment into the interest, put a portion of your monthly payment into the principal, and then put a portion of your monthly payment into an escrow account for your property taxes. So when the property taxes become due, the mortgage company pays the property taxes, you don't. And then they send you the 1098, which says over the year you paid this much of interest. This is your outstanding principal balance on this loan. And these are the property taxes you paid. And you pick up the property taxes on your tax return, and you can pick up the mortgage interest on your tax return. Most people can never actually use this because these are all itemized deductions on your tax return. And for a normal W-2 worker, you don't have enough itemized deductions to really matter over the level of the standard deduction. So at that point, you don't really get the benefit of paying the property tax and paying the mortgage interest. For people who have rental properties, a lot of the times what they're able to do is deduct any sort of interest that's on the rental property, because the rental property itself is now a business asset, business vehicle. They can deduct the interest expense against the rental property income. They can deduct property taxes paid on the rental house as part of like the business of renting the house versus the business of, or versus you just owning it, right? So there's a couple of things that you can do that at play there that are a bit different. When you have loans that aren't mortgage loans, you need to keep track of the interest that you're paying every month, and at the end of the year, assuming you have a proper loan agreement that spells out the interest rate, and you should really develop your own loan amortization schedule. There's so many calculators online for it, but there's also so many templates online where you just plug in your initial numbers and it'll just go down the list and tell you what your payment, if you tell it what your payment is, it'll tell you how much is going to interest and principal every month and how it's decreasing, etc. And we're adding up. And at the end of the year, you can say, okay, cool, I paid $20K in interest this year. Boom, take that to your tax return. You can put on your tax return if you itemize the deduction on Schedule A, and you can get the deduction for that. Depending on the type of interest, right? Business interest, investment interest expense is also a thing. If you use a loan to invest in something, the interest expense you pay on the loan because the proceeds were used for investing in a company, a partnership, an asset, whatever it is, a stock, maybe a fund or whatever it is. That's investment interest expense that you could take, subject to limitations, subject to threshold limitations, etc. You could pick that up on your tax return. Once again, normal people like us who have W-2 jobs this will never affect you in your life. Most likely it will never affect you in your life because you have to come up with what is the standard deduction right now? 27, something like that? Well, let me see. Sorry, I don't have the standard deduction memorized in my head anymore. I used to, and then our tax software does it for us, and I don't exactly remember off the top of my head. But the standard deduction for 2025 is, for single taxpayers, it's $15,750. For married couples, is $31,500. Yeah. So you have to come up with $16,000 of itemized expenses to even get the benefit of itemizing in the first place. Otherwise, there's no reason to, right? If my property tax, which you can only deduct up to $10,000 on your tax return, my property tax is $8K, maybe, or like $4K. Let's just say that $6K. I don't know, something $10K or under. Even if it's above $10K, you only get the benefit of the $10K. You maybe donate a couple of dollars to charity every year, but you don't donate like thousands. Charity donations have their own restrictions, 60% in cash and 60 and 50. So cash donations to organizations, if they're nonprofit organizations, are limited at 60% of the donation value can be deducted, or 50% depending on if it's going to a private organization, something like that. And then 30 and 20 if you are donating non-cash. So, no, that's not right. There's 60%, 50% for nonprofit organizations, and then I think exempt orgs, non-exempt orgs, something like that. when I do talk about taxes with you guys, I'll tell you guys what it is for real. But basically, I'm saying you have to understand that when you donate $100 to charity, you're not getting the deduction for the $100 of charity. You're getting like 60. When you donate $10,000 to charity, but God bless your soul if you do, you get up to 60% of that. So what is that? 6,000. And then of that 6,000, that's what's applied to your. That is netted with the rest of your itemized expenses to then see if you cross the standard deduction threshold, etc. And you get to maybe deduct that on your tax return. A lot of times you don't. So when you look at your taxes, you have to think about, dude, I made all these payments all year, and I can't deduct any of them. And it's like, no, because the IRS basically takes into account that if you don't want a very complicated tax return, and maybe normal people are making up to $15,750 of expenses in the year that they otherwise wouldn't be able to take. Let's just give them the standard deduction of $15,750. And even if you didn't make $15,750 of these type of expenses, you still get the $15,750. So it's favorable for you to take the standard deduction unless you are, investor, a business owner, a high net worth individual where you do so many things in a year, you have so many expenses, so many outflows of cash, or so many deductions where you're able to actually deduct up to, I've seen $1 million deductions on tax returns before because of the way that they plan their taxes. They make a ton of contributions. They still have their 10K property tax. They have their interest expense, which is a big part of it, still subject to limitations. Interest expense is still subject to, your investment income. And I've seen up to like $1 million deductions on returns. Part of my job is finding those deductions for people, for them to be able to take more, so they pay less tax or get a higher refund, higher overpayment. That's part of what an accountant is supposed to do. But it doesn't matter for people like me and you. That got off on a very big tangent, but I just wanted to explain how interest and loans and stuff like that work in a very rudimentary way. We can get technical on that shit. I don't think it's worth getting technical on that shit right now. But at some point in the future, I'll probably get technical with taxes with you guys just to help you guys out, because apparently a lot of people don't know it, or it just doesn't they don't realize it. But yeah, moving on to the next set of things I wanted to talk about, which I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. But before we do that, we're going to take a little drink break. And actually, I've thought against it. The next thing that we're going to talk about was going to be breaking down the different fallacies of life. And I find these fallacies and ironies and oxymorons of life very interesting. But I think we can do that in a whole different episode. So for now, I'll just leave you with the 3 thoughts of the empty vessel, Glamour, why the fuck a company like Theory exists and I never heard of it, and how interest actually works on loans and how standard loans actually work, mixed in with a little bit of tax knowledge. But in the future, I'll bring back the fallacies of life, and we'll talk about that then. How's that? Fair? Sick. All right. I'm going to catch you guys later. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I have some really fucking awesome guests who I get to talk to, who I've already talked to, and you're going to see those episodes in the next couple of weeks, and the ones that I'm talking to in the next couple of weeks and the rest of the year. I'm so excited to bring these conversations out. And if you guys do enjoy it, do me a favor, leave a like on the video, maybe share it with somebody who you think would enjoy it, who you think would enjoy just listening to what we talk about here. Comment what you're doing today. What are you working on right now? What's your business like? What's your business idea like, etc. All those things. This is live on YouTube and Spotify. If you didn't know it, it is also on Spotify, but I make these videos for YouTube essentially. And so yeah, you can find me in both places. Instagram, The End Goal Podcast. TikTok, also The End Goal Podcast if you're a TikToker now. And YouTube Shorts too. It's the clips are all there. We are clipping. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, consider sharing it with somebody who you think would also enjoy it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.